where that just came from. Well, Shane, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, but there is a lot going on that's given Christianity and Jesus a profoundly bad name. And we've got a cacistocracy of low IQ fascists running things in Washington, D.C., and a person who can't stop blaspheming in Pete Hegseth again today, taking God's name in vain and telling everybody to pray for the destruction of Iran and all that kind of thing. As somebody who is deeply immersed in your faith, how do you think Christians should be responding to this second iteration of the Trump regime and MAGA world?
Well, we're just going deep quick, I reckon, around here.
Yeah, we don't mess around.
Enough all talk, a little moonshine, and we're right into the heretics and the apostasies. All right. Well, here's the deal: is I think a couple of thoughts initially. One is this isn't brand new. Right. There has always been bad religion. Folk, not just the band, the punk rock band, but actually like toxic, deadly, dangerous religion. And that was true in the time of Jesus. So I think we can take heart in the fact that Jesus's harshest words, like brood of vipers, was not for folks at the fringes of the faith, but people who were at the center of religious power, who were twisting theology in order to hurt people. So, Frederick Douglass, he named the fact that, he said, between the Christianity of this land, America, and the Christianity of Christ, I recognize the widest possible difference. So wide that to call one good, pure, and holy, you have to see the other as bad, corrupt, and wicked. And he said, I love the pure, peaceable Christianity of Christ. And therefore, I hate, the slave holding, women whipping, cradle plundering, hypocritical Christianity of this land, America. So I think that we can name the fact that even though, Christian nationalism may be sort of a buzzword, wicked twisting of scripture has always been a terrible thing. And no one kills with more passion than someone who thinks that God has got their back. So we grieve that. But here's what I would suggest too is we give the haters too much airtime when we allow them to monopolize the narrative. The fact is that some of the biggest resistance to Trump, not all of it, but some of it, has come from faith-rooted activists and Christians among them. Black women in particular have been the steadfast conscience of America, over 80% standing solidly against the rhetoric and policies and racism of Donald Trump. And many of those are church women. They're folks that are fueled by their faith. So there's always been these competing narratives. And I think that's really helpful because if we're not careful, we allow the Franklin Grahams to really hijack the narrative of what Christianity is really about.
Yeah. And I, I don't know if you've ever come across me on social media, but I do public theology and admittedly from probably a more heterodox place than where you might be. But I get my inspiration from the teachings of Jesus. And I left the world of fundamentalism because I was cross-referencing what I was hearing in church with the letters in red. And it was like a never the twain shall meet kind of thing almost. It was so much more about what you believed and ticking all those boxes of orthodoxy or creeds and whatnot. And there was so very little about how you're supposed to behave, how you're supposed to live, what you're supposed to do when you see the domination system, as Walter Wink would call it, empire, power, the conflation of Christianity and empire, or the intentional marginalization of people, or the stratification of wealth that unfettered capitalism creates. All of those kinds of things. And I was looking and I was going, I don't see Jesus in any of this. And our good friend John Fugelsang says all the time that, the mainstream media, when it comes to Christianity, they're uplifting these voices like Franklin Graham or Doug Wilson or Pete Hegseth, who wouldn't know Jesus if Jesus came up and shook his hand.